So you've heard us use this term project-based learning a lot as we've gotten the school open. What I'd like you to do tonight as we go through this video is to teach you some of the terms that we're going to be using that explain exactly what a project is. Every project starts with what we call an entry document. Now this is usually a letter or an invitation or a piece of paper, or it might be a video or even a visit from someone. And what the entry document does is it tells you exactly what opportunities you're going to have, what the problem is that you're going to solve, or what the project is that you're going to be created. And the entry document is important because it contains all the information for the things that you're going to need to figure out to guide your path through the rest of the project. So once you have your entry document, your first task as a team is going to be to read through it very carefully and figure out exactly what you already know based on the information in the document or things that you just know from your own experiences, and most importantly, the things that you're going to need to know. Now, we usually abbreviate these as NTKs so that it makes it just easier as we're talking through the process. But throughout the whole project, we're going to be going back to these ideas of what is it that you personally or on your team need to know in order to complete it. So the group contract is a really important document because the contract is where you're going to sit down and figure out what the strengths are for the people on your team and exactly who's going to be responsible for what kinds of activities. So this is where you're going to outline exactly what's due, who's going to get it done, and when it's going to come in. So the group contract is something to take very seriously and to revisit from time to time as you figure out how your team is performing. Now, I know some of you may have done group work in the past and may have complained about it. Maybe you've been in a group where, no one else is getting the work done and you seem to be the only one who's doing it, or where someone else has an idea and they won't listen to anyone else in the group. One of the things that I like about the way that we're going to be doing project-based learning is that you always have your own individual responsibilities. You are going to be responsible for figuring out how you will learn something best, and you can always request an alternative activity, an additional resource, a workshop of some kind, or something to make sure that your needs are getting met. A scaffold is a temporary structure that helps give some support as people are trying to build a building or climb up something really high. So when we talk about a scaffolding activity in class, these are going to be little activities that we do throughout the project, and it might be something that your teachers assign, it might be something that you decide to do or that your group just decides to do, but these are activities that are going to help to answer the specific need to know, whether it's something that the whole class said was a real need to know or whether it's something you personally need to know. The scaffolding activities will be little practice activities and little group things that we will do, or some whole class things that we will do, kind of more like you think of from a traditional classroom. But these will be the activities that will help you along the way in getting to whatever it is that you do need to know. For me as a teacher, the workshops are probably the most fun part of project-based learning. Instead of the usual role where the teacher stands in front of the class and teaches the whole class, instead from time to time what you'll see your teachers do is to pull a small group over and announce, hey, I'm going to be doing a workshop on this particular idea. So when we get to creation myths, for example, and we're talking about archetypes, if your group has already figured this out and you know exactly what you're doing, fine, you go on and you don't have to worry about it. But if you need a little bit more support either personally or you think your whole group needs a little more help, then you will attend the workshop. Now, from time to time, workshops are required. I may ask one person from each team to attend a workshop, for example, and then take that information back to the rest of your team. Or you can personally request a workshop and say, hey, I really don't understand this. Can we meet together and kind of go over it a little bit? So workshops are one way that we make sure that your learning is individualized and that it's meeting the needs that you have to complete this particular project. Okay, so as we talked about at the start, one of the first things that you're going to do after you get your entry document is to create your chart of what it is that you need to know. So part of it will be things you already know, and the other part will be things you need to know. So as we go through the project, every couple days or so, we're going to stop and go back and say, hey, at the very beginning you said you needed to know, for example, the due date of the project. Do you feel that you know that now? And if so, then we cross that off, and you can move it into the we already know this column. So this way we make sure to see what it is that you've learned, what we need to test still, and to evaluate what it is that you still need as we finish up the project. So in addition to the curriculum goals of a project, now for English, your curriculum goals might include things like learning about a specific author or understanding how to recognize a particular piece of figurative language. There are also school-wide learning outcomes, and these are the kind of soft skills that we want all students to develop here at RTHS. These could include things like working together as a team, or giving oral presentations. How do you stand up in front of people and be very effective at what you do? They might also include things like the ability to reflect on your assignments, to think critically or creatively about what you're doing, to research and evaluate sources, all the kinds of things that aren't necessarily related directly to English, but are important skills to build as you go through school. A portfolio is very simply just a collection of all the materials that you have created as you put together the project. Now, these will all be due the day before that you actually do the presentations. On presentation day, you're going to be pretty busy getting the rest of those things together, and the day before is when I want to make sure to have a chance to see that you've got all of your documents in line, all of the work that you've done, to make sure that you get credit for everything that you've accomplished. Now, the whole purpose of the project is to have something that's going to actually be shown and used out in the real world. On presentation day is the day that you get to show off what it is that you have created. On presentation day, you may be presenting to a panel of judges from the community. It may be parents that we've invited in. It may be fellow students. It may be fellow teachers. Or it may be someone who's directly connected to whatever the problem is that you wanted to solve. So presentation day is a pretty exciting time. On presentation day, the teams will be dressed up either in their most professional clothing or in something that's related to their project, and they'll have an opportunity to really show off their work. The rubric is the exact document that your teachers are going to use to grade your assignment. So in project-based learning, you actually get the rubric very early on in the project, and you can use it to guide all of your choices to make sure you understand that you're meeting everything that the teachers are going to be looking for. This way there's no surprises, and you understand the expectations very clearly right from the start. One of the things that you're going to put into your group contract from the beginning are the conditions under which a group member can be fired. As I said before, most of you have had the opportunity to work on projects, and you may have had that one person on the team that never seemed to keep up with the reading, never seemed to be doing their share. Well, in project-based learning, you're going to have an opportunity to make sure that that person is holding their own, or they don't get to be part of your team anymore. Now, firing is an act of last resort. It is not something that you just do the first day that you get upset with someone. But you're going to be spelling out in your contract some very specific ways that you're going to let people know that, hey, we thought you were going to do this, you're not getting this done, here are the steps we expect you to take. Before someone can be fired, one of the steps has to be a conference with your teacher and a phone call home to parents so they understand what happens. Now, if you're fired from a group, what happens is you have to turn over to the group and to the teacher anything that you've already done as a group. So you don't have the benefit of the group anymore, and then you have to do the entire project from scratch without a change in the due date. So firing really puts somebody out on their own, and this is only a last step for someone who really is not doing what they need to do and is not responding to chances to do better. In a lot of ways, the reflection may be the most important part of your project, because the reflection is where you're going to look back and figure out what worked and what didn't work, always with an eye towards doing it better next time. If you never stop to figure out what worked, then you don't know how to repeat it, and if you never stop to figure out why something didn't work, then you don't know how to avoid making that mistake again. Now, there'll be two kinds of reflection. One is where you kind of evaluate how the whole project went for your team and for the classmates, and the other is where you evaluate how you personally feel that you did. The project is usually the reflection, is usually some sort of a formal piece of writing. It might be a group discussion, it might be a worksheet of some kind, but it is a part of the process that's very key, and it will be collected and graded, and it's kind of the final way to wrap up everything that you will have learned as part of the project.